Thank you for joining me, man. First question I ask everyone is, when did you know music was going to be a part of your life?
Ooh, that's huh. Let's see. I don't know. I was like 12 or 13 years old, and I remember getting thrown down in a pit at a show in Paducah, Kentucky, a small town that nobody's ever heard of. And like, I don't know, just having like a great time and a great night. That was probably when I was like, I'm gonna do this forever.
Yeah.
What a terrible choice that was.
Did you just go to that show like as a fan, or like how did you even get involved with music, like just in general? Like what drove you to that show?
So there was this church that set up skateboard ramps, and I found out about it. I went out to one night and I was like, cool, I can go skate there. And I met some other people that were skating, and this one guy had a mohawk, and he was like, hey, I like your Unseen shirt. And I was like, you know who this band is? Because I came from a town that is like, only a couple thousand people, really, really small place. And so I was kind of surprised someone else knew. He was a little older, and then he had MySpace and I had MySpace. So we talked a little more on there, and he was like, yeah, you should add this band as your friend. They're pretty cool. And because back then you could just do that. So there was this band that was playing a Battle of the Bands in Paducah, and we drove from Union City, Tennessee up there, and it was like 45 minutes. I totally lied to my mom about where I was. I think he did too. Um, oh no, I'm falling all over the place.
That's all good.
But yeah, no, we had a great time, and it was a battle of the bands, and that's where I first saw my first punk rock show. And then from there, I like kept kind of following this band, and they were like, "Oh, let's book some touring bands, in this area." So they started doing that, and then as I got older, I started doing it. I ran a booking promotions company for a couple of years in the South, and like one of the last acts I booked was Suicidal Tendencies, and that was awesome, so getting to see, that's the only way I was able to see new bigger bands that I wanted to see. It wasn't like they were touring anywhere near me in Tennessee growing up. I had to book them. So when I got older, I started figuring out how to do that with a DIY promotions company, and I went from there, and I just kept kind of booking and booking, and then I was sick of booking and wanted to go play music. So I sold everything I had, and I tried to book myself out on the road as long as I could. So I was out for about 3 years, and then coronavirus hit, and then I kind of stayed put. So I was in about 200 shows a year.
Damn, that's wild. That's really impressive, man. So well, I guess we'll get to kind of like the booking and the shows. You mentioned like the unseen, and like how did you even get into like punk and maybe more like underground kind of bands, like before even going to your first show? Like how did you like listen or find new bands at the time?
So I didn't have a TV really. We sometimes got the Memphis Fox channel, even though it was like 3 hours away. But we didn't really even get like antenna channels where I grew up in the like boondocks, big old country. Sometimes you hear it in my voice, but that's where I grew up. So cornfield, backyard, bean field, front yard kind of place, and so I ended up moving into another house that was able to get dial-up internet, and we were like, "Oh, that's huge!" I'm gonna play Tony Hawk Pro Skater online.
Yeah.
Mom, get off the phone. So yeah, when it went from that, I was like, I started downloading music on LimeWire.
Yeah.
Just a vague punk search. An occasional being like, "Oh, that's porn." But yeah, no, that helped a lot. And then whenever I met that other dude at that skateboarding, he liked some of the same bands, and then he showed me bands. I showed him some bands. He showed me a lot more bands because he was older. And then he was like, "Yeah, I got some friends in this town where we added this band on MySpace, and they're gonna play this show." And like, we all mobbed up there together, and I met other people that had on band shirts. So I was like, "Yo, that's cool." So I mean, it all came from just meeting people and traveling, and from there, like I think that's probably where it happened, was small scene of Paducah, Kentucky.
That's awesome, man. What was the first instrument you learned how to play?
Guitar. Yeah.
When did when did that happen? Like when did guitar come in your life?
I remember being like 11 or 12, and my grandpa gave me one that was kind of beat up. Or I was about 10 or 11 around then, but I ended up being 13 whenever I got my first one, and I wanted to play bass. And my dad was like, "No, I'm not going to help you get a bass guitar. You need to, well, the losers play bass guitar. You're going to play a real guitar, lead guitar solo, chicks." And I was like, "Oh, I want to play bass." And I remember it was like a weird thing. So like when I turned 16, I bought my first bass guitar then, and I was just like really into it. And it's actually my favorite instrument like over guitar, even though I've been playing that one longer. I'm just like way more comfortable with the tones of a four string, you know.
Yeah, man. I listened to Oh No, like that's how we kind of started talking. And dude, that song's so good. Like,
Thank you.
yeah, man, so catchy. The bass is
I
great.
saw you doing the bass thing whenever you added me, and I was just like, man, I bet this guy would like my ska bass line in this song. And
Yeah.
like, I'm glad you did. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, totally. So did so I guess we'll fast forward a little bit. So for trying to get by, is that just you, or do you have a band, or how did that kind of come about?
okay, so when I was touring with Some Kind of Nightmare, I was out with them for about 9 months, and
Mhm.
then like I got um I had a break around my birthday, like, so I took like this whole month off, and we had another drummer come in and fill in and film a part of a documentary for them and stuff. So when I had that month off, I had like a week that I went and hung out with somebody in Missouri that my mom knew when I was like 14 or something like that, that like randomly hit me up and was like, "Hey, I got this studio thing I want to show you." And so I was like, "Sure, I'll go out there." And he started showing me it and like how to work it. And he just gave me a big bag of weed and was like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna let you do this. I gotta go run some errands." So I stayed there for 2 days, and that's where I made the first Trying to Get By record, was just me playing all the instruments. But then I did some acoustic stuff here and there. But when I was living in Nashville, about 6, 7 months after that, I took some time off to live there. My buddy Steve Merkel hit me up and was like, "Hey, I have this awesome drummer that's moved here from Philadelphia, and he, or no, Pittsburgh, and he's looking to play. Do you want to play those Trying to Get By songs as a band?" And I was like, "Sure." So we started rehearsing, and we got it was Steven and Steve, and then we recorded an EP called Steve and Tyler, and that's on Bandcamp and on Spotify and iTunes and all that. And it's like more just a early version of the band, still figuring it out. And then when I was in San Diego, I spent 2 winters out there taking time off. I live out there too. I just kind of bounce around. You'll figure that out, I guess. Um, but yeah, in San Diego, I had a lineup out there with Adam Kripe from a bunch of bands down there, and then we had Kyle Hansberger playing stand-up bass. So it was a
Yeah.
psychobilly version of all the songs that were out at the time. And we were about to record with Dave Klein, and then I got another call to go on tour with another band, and that was Voice of Addiction, to go back out with them, which I've gone on tour with them multiple times now. And he's definitely someone you want to talk to about bass guitar. That guy's nuts.
Hell yeah. Yeah, man. Cool. So we'll go back a little bit. So you met the dude at the skate park, you start going to shows, you pick up your guitar. So like what's the first band that you start like wanting, or the first band that you created or you joined? Like when did live music start becoming a thing for you?
I mean, we just started like dicking around as kids, like
Mhm.
playing music. I mean, we kind of had different names for our bands, but we didn't do anything until I moved to Memphis. And then I had to drop out after my second semester because I skipped the first 2 weeks of music theory class, which kind of is skipping 4 consecutive classes. I lost all my scholarships, and I was getting paid to go to school and everything. So I
Mhm.
was like, eh. And I just started playing with a bunch of different bands down there and experiencing like actually playing live music. So it would sometimes probably be right after my college dreams got crushed.
Yeah. So like what were you going to school for? For music, like in particular?
It was actually recording technology and philosophy, oddly enough. But I was always kind of into recording myself at home, and that's where this whole thing came out of trying to get by. Was just like, hey, I got all these ideas for songs, but like, I don't know what to do. Yeah. So I just kind of been teaching myself because I never got to go through the rest of college to learn how to actually use all the equipment.
Yeah, for sure, man. Like, so how do you form like your ideas? Like, um, where does like your music or your song like ideas come from?
Everything kind of just based on whatever I'm feeling at the moment. I kind of like most writers, kind of feel like they some people can just write, and some people can only write under some kind of pressure, like mentally. And I feel like I'm one of those people. So whenever a lot of the writing came out for this album that like I'm dropping bits and pieces of now, was all happening during the um, so much shit that was happening last year, politically or this, and along with the structure of society itself, just like watching it all happen, and also being sober, and that being new to me because I almost died and had to like quit drinking and everything cold turkey, and like so I had all this moment of clarity and then forced clarity also, crushing with it. So at the same time I hadn't, all these different things to write about. I didn't know what to write about. So everything was totally new and different as a way for me to write my songs, as opposed to how I normally would,
Yeah.
So everything felt new to me in the way I did it this time. And I felt like it worked. I mean, I
Mm.
wrote some great songs.
Yeah, man. Like just the single, the "Oh No," like sounds so well produced and recorded. Like everything's super clear and like it's mixed great. Um, what's your like process when you're writing a song? Do you like do guitars first or drums or like what's your go-to?
With this project, I changed it up a lot, but usually I would, start with I mean, in most cases I start with the lyrics, and then I kind of base the song around that and like other stuff. But for this, I just had different ideas for pieces, and I was trying to put them together. And I started doing it with a drum machine to figure out like how to place out the songs. So after I started doing that, I got the structure of the songs laid out how I wanted to, and that was just a newer way for me to go about it. But I feel like it was as far as me doing this in quarantine, recording all the instruments myself, with me playing everything, like this was something to experiment with. And as far as why they sound so good, that's because Kyle Talev from Counterpunch.
Mm.
Um, he also is an engineer for Black and Bloom Audio. He actually remotely mixed these tracks for me, and that helped me out a lot, with making it sound way more professional, more clean. He also got the idea of what the sound I'm really going after too.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of difficult at first, but to you know frustrating to get over myself and be like, I just got to give the songs to someone else to handle. Glad I did, because now I know what it's supposed to sound like, and he knows what my sound's supposed to sound like too. So I grew a lot by doing it this way. But yeah, all in all, this is like a totally new process for me, the way I normally would do.
Awesome, dude. Again, it really sounds great. Okay, so we'll go back to you. So you moved to Memphis. When did you start getting involved in like touring bands and getting kind of into the touring scene?
I started booking bands about a year after I dropped out of college there,
Hmm.
just because I noticed it was like, touring bands weren't really playing there, but I was like getting on Facebook, and at that time Facebook was starting out, so I started being like, oh shit, there's all these bands are tagging me and being like, yeah, I know this one punk kid, he just moved there. And so it just started like with word of mouth of everybody being like, hey, there's this guy that lives there and he'll help you find a show, and like some punk bands. And then it turned into a festival that I ran for 5 years, and I ended up booking 660 something bands over 5 years on tour, like through the city, and that ranged alongside from ska and punk and reggae to even folk and indie stuff. But yeah, I was just like booking nonstop, so it became like Facebook even though email was all the main contact stuff, Facebook, like, I showed bands a great time. If they came through, I was like, yo, you're staying where I'm staying. Like half the time I was homeless. I was like, I'll help you guys find a place to stay, you know. And so I was just throwing down and partying, and so everybody was cool with it. So we ended up being friends on Facebook and staying up with each other. And with so many of those bands booking like that, eventually it was like reverse booking whenever I decided I want to go on tour and just play music rather than be the booking guy, And it worked out like great because I was able to find a lot of people that needed someone to like fill in a leg of a tour or something like that. So I became more of a touring session guy, for a second. And like that was great. I got to travel and see a lot of people that I haven't seen in a long time, and see new places and see new things. And it was the best decision I ever made for sure. But yeah, it became like reverse booking. It was like all my contacts just flipped over, and it also was great for all the bands I was touring with that were like going into different territories that none of us have been into. But I'm like, oh, I know someone on Facebook for there that I helped them book a show on a Monday night at a fucking like coffee bar or some shit,
Yeah.
and it's like end up being a great night. So all in all, it comes down to unity and putting on a good time for whoever you can in the music scene, and hoping that they return it whenever you get back to their area.
Yeah. So people were, when you filled in, was it primarily bass, or was it just kind of whatever they needed?
It's whatever anybody needed, really. I played bass on a couple records of like before I started touring as well. And I also played bass for a thrash metal band that hasn't played a show in probably 5 years, called Evil Army. And they're on Housecore Records, Phil Anselmo's record label. They've mainly been doing stuff with Hell's Headbangers the past couple of releases. It's fucking wild, like really crazy cult thrash metal, and that's just very high energy tremolo picking, and making sure my bass sounds like a high gain, high medium Gatling gun,
Yeah.
and it sounds so good. It sounds so righteous when you do it right. So I miss playing with them. And there's talks of us maybe doing a reunion show or something like that, and after Halloween if things are safe.
Yeah. That's cool, man. So these people who are asking you to fill in, like, do they know that you're also just like a musician, like an all-around musician? Is that why they're asking, or just like, hey, this is my friend who helped me book, like, let's just take him on the road with us, kind of deal, or both?
Yeah, I mean it's mainly kind of like, yeah, it's both pretty much. It's cases I'm like an infamous like myth. Just like not in like any kind of cool bragging way or anything. It's just like, oh, that fucking guy. Like, yeah, he'll do it.
And so when you're going on tour with these bands, like what's your process of learning their music?
It's different every time, but it's usually crammed, and I'm trying not to do that anymore. Whenever I learned a lot from doing that. Like whenever I toured for Gutter Villain, I literally saved up for busting my ass doing staging, like building stages and stuff in Nashville, so I could buy this minivan just so I could get to them to learn their songs to go on tour. So I ended up getting the money and getting the minivan like the next day, and then leaving that next day. So within those 3 days, and I got out there before the tour started, so I had like less than 2 weeks to learn their songs on drums. Everybody in the band lived in different parts of Tulsa, so we only were able to practice, I think, 5 different times. And they were like short 20-30 minute practices because that band just likes to, party and drink, and they just got distracted. And, but then, in cases like Some Kind of Nightmare, I rode 2 different megabuses over like 11 hours and showed up. And then we laid blankets over the drum set in their garage, and we played really, really quiet. I went over the songs like, I was playing drums for them. And we left the next day to go out, and I was on tour with them for 9 months straight. So it's always kind of different. And Voice of Addiction, the first time I went on tour with them, I didn't even know there was a new album out. I was a total drunk. I had no clue what was going on, but I somehow was able to learn the whole Art of Empathy album Not as good as I know it now, but within the 4 days before that tour started, that was coming off a megabus and landing in Chicago and being like, "What do you mean new album? Like, I know the old songs."
Man. Yeah,
And
man, you're
that's for
really
lead guitar, so that's a lot more intricate things for as far as like that man's like propaganda almost, you know.
yeah. Man, that's pretty wild. Just in like touring in general is pretty crazy. I went on like a 2 month tour. It's the longest tour I've done with a band called the Lost Project, and like in that 2 months was we already had like a bunch of
Wait a
like
second.
tour stories.
The Lost Project. I had your 7-inch record of the crazy bitch, the girl, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
Reggae group, right? The ska band.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Booked
So
y'all in Memphis, Tennessee on that run.
yeah, I think so. It was at the bar that like Black
Murphy.
Keys played, right?
Yeah, the it was called Murphy's, and there was oh shit, yeah, it was a weird night because I also had US Bastards featuring the dude from Gore that was also booked on that night, and then I had a disco funk band with the
Yes.
local. I threw together the weirdest bill ever for that night.
Yeah,
Holy
man.
shit, that's nuts. Hey, it's good to see you.
Yeah, nice seeing you, man.
That's
Yeah,
wild.
yeah, dude. Yeah, I mean, this is another just case in point that touring is fucking crazy.
It's a small world. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it totally is, man. That night was awesome. I remember playing Pokemon Go like in the park right next to wherever the venue.
Yeah, no, that was nuts because the local band was like, "Yeah, this is the weirdest lineup we've ever been on. So we're gonna bring all these lights." And I was like, "What?" And they brought a full light show in that tiny dive bar, and I've never seen anything happen there like that.
Yeah, yeah, dude. It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
So I was gonna ask you actually, since you've been on tour so much, like, just what are like one or two maybe crazy tour stories you got?
Oh snap. It's easier if you just pick a city or something. Like I don't know. Everywhere I go, crazy seems to follow.
Have there been any like crazy houses or places you've stayed at?
Oh yeah, all of them. They're nuts. There's a oh god. Okay, there's a place in Indianapolis I found once or twice called the Punk Rock Mansion.
Hmm.
It's smack dab in the middle of a suburban neighborhood, and it's just like you go inside and it's just spray paint, couches ripped over. But there's also like the poor kids mansion out in LA that I've been to, and it's like a multi-story thing over spreading over the hills of fancy parts that are right like 5 minutes from downtown. You know, gated, electric gate and everything. Somehow these kids got about squatter rights or something, and like they just all live there, and it's like 20 different punks. And then you go out to the res. There's some crazy stuff out there for sure. Crusty Palms out in Phoenix. It's like north of Phoenix in the desert. That's wild. It's literally just like this shack kind of like house, just like with the good electricity, and they like built a mini ramp, and just have wild shows back in the day over there.
Yeah.
Vancouver was really weird. Tijuana was awesome. And yeah, I don't know, New York. I've had some good times up there, and that's usually like when I'm playing. Other than that, New York's just like a terrible city.
Yeah, dude. Man, so like, just a funny story about New York. It's my first time going to New York, and I'm with those dudes in the Lost Project, and they're just like, "Hey, we're gonna meet this dude named Ivan in Chinatown. Like, just go and ask for Ivan." And like, that's our only like orders kind of deal. So we
Nice.
go into this little like chicken sandwich place, like owned by some Puerto Rican dude, and we're just like like looking for Ivan, and he's not there. But for whatever reason, it's like someone's last day, and they start like giving out free food, and they have like beer, and it's just
Oh
like the
yeah.
weirdest, like most New York kind of thing I've ever
So all you
experienced.
had to do is walk in and be like, "Yo, I know Ivan."
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, dude, they made like beignets and whatever. I don't know. It was so wild. That was like my first New York experience. Um But so for touring though, what kind of advice would you give someone going on their first tour?
Uh, Drink water. uh, and always fill up before you get down to a quarter of a tank. I always try to fill up every time I get to a half tank, but some bands don't like stopping that much. But yeah, never travel in less than a quarter of a tank because the desert is big. And also Florida is incredibly large, like, and nobody realizes until they set a tour down there.
Yeah, I feel that. Our first like 4 or 5 shows were in Florida. Like there was
Yeah.
so many places to play.
Yeah, and don't be a jerk, watch everybody's bands that's they're there supporting you, as the touring band. You should, pay it back, watch them. And if they're, if there's something to do, hang out, just make friends. It's an experience that, like, I fucking wouldn't trade for anything in the world. And that's why I'm doing everything I can to stay safe, to make sure that I can return, like, when shows are safe again. And I just got my first poke over here. I'm pretty proud of.
Hey, me too. I went today also.
Oh, cool. You want to have some, like, 5
I know, it's telepathic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah.
Trying to tighten up on my Russian, but that hasn't kicked in yet.
Yeah, me either. Yeah, man. Dude, touring's crazy. Music is awesome. So you said you're just kind of like, you got vaccinated. Like, how's it been during this quarantine? Like, what have you been up to? I know you wrote the new album, but is there anything else you've been doing?
Yeah, like, in order to help pay for the mixes and adjust to, like, living somewhere and having bills again, it's kind of been weird. So I've been having to, like, uh do things for money, and, and it's just like, oh man, this is more money that I never had to come up with before, like, it's been so long that, like, I guess I feel dumb, like I feel like I'm starting over, so I've worked some cooking gigs here and there to, like, because cooking has always been a big part of my life and something I've always done on the side. So I'm thankful for having that and being able to still have those gigs whenever I can find them. But along with that, I've been donating plasma. So I donated 42 times. Yeah, 42 times since September of last year. But people can donate twice a week, and it's with all the stuff going on, I felt pretty cool, good about it.
Yeah.
Because some people's medicines take like 16, 17 bottles of plasma just to have one treatment of it. That's nuts. But the main thing I was doing it for was just to stay alive, to pay my own bills, pay for my dog and everything else that I needed. Make sure that, like, I had somewhere to be, because I didn't want to be homeless in a pandemic, especially with, like, Chicago winter, because this is where I landed. So yeah, I was donating plasma, and sometimes it's a good payout, sometimes it's a bad payout. You can't really gauge it. But then, so is that I started screen printing. Got myself out of screen print, and now I've been making patches for other bands. I've been making t-shirts of my dog and all sorts of stuff like that. And above everything, I've just been learning about, pushing myself to learn more about music production and DIY production, what I can handle, what I can make, and what I can make sound good with all the songwriting, and also just practicing instruments, because I feel like if I got a year off from playing shows, dude, I would feel like such an asshole if I came back and I wasn't any better, right?
Yeah, I can see that, man.
Yeah, so I think everybody should be tightening up on their skills. It wouldn't make sense not to.
Yeah, you got time. So when you're learning or even practicing, like, how do you find new ways to practice, or how do you, like, educate yourself? Do you just utilize, like, YouTube or the internet?
In most cases, like, something, since I grew up without teachers or internet or anything like that, I always got my like, learned from just playing along to songs or just improvising and just seeing where my brain takes me. So in most cases, I just kind of just, like, sit down whenever I go to practice something, just, like, improvise something. I'm like, oh, that's a cool riff, and I'll kind of play that a couple times. I don't really have it as far as like a real technique and a structure set of learning to keep pushing myself, but as far as like making sure that my hands are still comfortable and that my muscle memory doesn't fade, because that's another thing that like a lot of people are worried about is like when I'm playing shows, like how am I gonna learn to play standing up again? And I'm like, dude, I run around my basement with my guitar and I'm not even playing songs. Like I'm just like, yeah. But I gotta watch out. Ceilings are really low.
Dang. Yeah. Yeah. It looks a little low.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So what are your plans for the rest of 2021?
I'm just gonna keep pushing these songs out and you know, tightening up the ones that I haven't put out yet. And I'm still working with Voice of Addiction. We have a new album that we're going to be recording sometime soon. I get to go write it all with Ian, and I'm really excited about that. Just like it has my own, you know, little style and touch to it that I bring whenever I tour with them, and it's just more of like a raw punk element to their really clean, nice tone.
Mm.
But I'm really excited about these songs with Voice of Addiction for sure. They're very on topic for everything that's also happened in the past year, in the past 4 years, past decade. You know, all of it is just very apparent. You know, it's gonna make everyone pissed and stay pissed. Like I'm really excited about this Voice of Addiction record.
Oh yeah, and that's like the true like punk like mentality, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
how important is that to you to just kind of have that mentality to where like your music like means something, you know?
I feel like if people are listening to you, then and you're not using that platform to get a message out, you're just wasting anyone's time. And you know, it's like as far as I mean, not as an insult to this to anybody else with that kind of music. I'm just saying like there's so much music out there these days, and if you're not making a statement in your music, it's just going to get ran over and like thrown in with a bland mix of, you know, anybody else is just writing a song just to have a song. And I feel like whenever I'm putting these songs out, you know, I've had invested so much of my life into learning music that if I'm going to do anything that I'm proud of musically, that I also want to make sure it has a message along with it, so it doesn't, you know, it isn't just, you know, some bubblegum stuff that I can push out. Like I want the lyrics to have an effect. I want it to make people think, and I want it to start conversation. And that's the main thing that I really am pushing forward for this new album, and as well as the new VOA album that's coming out. A lot of it, you know, needs to spark conversation about things that need to be talked about, and some things are being talked about, but there's so much more work left to do in the world, and a lot of things just we don't need to forget about as we're making progress on them.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's so exciting to hear too. And so y'all are currently writing that. Do you know more or less when you'll have something out? Any ideas?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that. We just kind of been like rehearsing these songs every other week for almost a year.
Yeah.
So it's like all of it's pretty much well written and is done. It's just like we just want to meet up just to make sure that we're tight on it. But we haven't set a recording date. Ian just moved. He just got a new house in Chicago and just moved in there. So we spent the first like we spent about 2 months like with the process of him moving out of his old place, and that's where we also practice at, into the new place. And it was a more residential area, so we were like, let's soundproof it. So we actually took like a whole month of soundproofing, like pro job. We did it just like Ian did a lot of it, but like I went over there with them, and like you can't hear it from the outside. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like an inch or like half an inch of rubber vinyl like on the walls and the ceiling, and then it's like foam on top of that, and it's got soundproofing caulk underneath it all. And it's pretty impressive job, but it's one of the nicest sounding practice rooms I've had. So we've just been getting tight again after that time. But I'm hoping to announce something soon because I really want to go in and record it.
Hell yeah. Cool, man. So where can people listen to your music?
Tryingtogetby is available on everything, as long as you remember it's one word. And that's something that I just got to remember to keep adding in there, because whenever I say it, sometimes I say it too fast and people are like, what the fuck is that guy talking about, man? But yes, it's Trying to Get By. It's one word, and it's available on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, wherever you listen to music. Bandcamp, you can buy everything there. As far as merch and all that stuff, I kind of just sell it off of my Facebook page, occasionally on Bandcamp, through PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, or whatever, and everything I make by myself, by my own hands. And I have a 7-inch coming out on a polycarbonate piece of plastic. It's about that thick, and there's only 30 of them that have made. So, and I'm screen printing the jackets. Those are going to be released whenever the EP drops on April 16th.
Hell yeah. Well, Tyler, dude, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Hopefully I catch you if you come through San Antonio or if I go on tour again. But yeah, man, thank you again, and just have a great day. I'll talk to you later.
Right on. It's good talking to you. Good to see you again.
Yeah, nice seeing you, man. Later.
Peace.